50. Currently, partly sunny and 45. Next news at 9. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The honky women were warned that they better get on board with the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pantsuit, or they'd be held to pay in advance of the November 5th election. This is a good representation of the sort of rap you were hearing from the identitarians. Angela Rye is somebody you see on CNBC and MSNBC, whatever, same deal, often. And she's also part of that zoo crew with Charlemagne the God, who's such a popular stop for Kamala and the Democrats when it comes to radio programs.
You know, I think that it's wonderful that President Obama is out hitting the trail for democracy, frankly. And what I think is a mistake is to let white folks escape the accountability that they must face for not showing up to save democracy themselves. Like, they want to get mad at presidential candidates, right, when they don't wear a flag lapel pin or they don't see you pledging allegiance to the flag. That's what they want to get upset about. Now, the face of patriotism to them looks like trying to tear down the Capitol in a terrorist attack on January 6, 2021. So the responsibility of saving democracy should be on the largest demographic in this country. That is white men and white women. I don't want to see a women's march with cats come January if something doesn't go right. What I want to see is for them to march themselves to the polls, including today. We are in Detroit, Michigan for an early vote rally. In Michigan, early voting starts next Saturday, which is my birthday, Victor.
Happy birthday.
But today in Detroit starts today. There's a big event at Pistons Land. We will be adjacent to that event, talking to folks, Detroit voters, about what they want to hear, about the agendas that matter to them, about the economy, about health care, about ensuring that democracy is preserved, even if it's not perfect. We're doing our part. It's time for white folks to turn their ire and their attention to each other to ensure they also do their part.
That was a couple weeks before the election. On election night, this was Joy Reid on the MSNBC desk after North Carolina had been called for Trump.
Black voters came through for Kamala Harris. White women voters did not. That is what it appears happened in that state, is that if you can't flip enough white women, and we've talked about this on this set numerous times, is that you have a state where you've got a 6-week abortion or a 12-week abortion. I think theirs might be 12 weeks. Yep. But it's a state where women lost their reproductive rights, where there was a very heavy push to get women to focus on not putting in place, re-electing, putting back into the White House the person who was responsible for taking those rights away and restoring them. But that message obviously was not enough to get enough white women to vote for Vice President Harris, a fellow woman. This will be the second opportunity that white women in this country have to change the way that they interact with the patriarchy. And
interact with the patriarchy is a bit of a giveaway, isn't it? Of course, this ignores the fact that Trump 2020 to 2024 performance, voters under 30, 12-point shift to Trump. Black voters, 15-point shift to Trump. Hispanic, 38-point shift to Trump. Asian voters, 32-point shift to Trump. States, blue states, New York, 11-point shift to Trump. California, 11-point shift to Trump. Illinois, 8-point shift to Trump. But it's all the white women's fault because I guess in the minds of Joy Reid and Angela Rye and these other identitarians, they treat white women as some sort of monolith, and they will all vote in one direction and on the same bases, even though if somebody would suggest that of black women or black voters, they would be termed racist, I have no doubt, by Joy Reid and Angela Rye. For more on this, Joanna Williams joins us, Spike columnist, founder of CIEO, and author of How Woke Won, the Elitist Movement that Threatens Democracy, Tolerance, and Reason. Joanna, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
So you wrote about this, the rage against white women that was bubbling below the surface before the election and now has surfaced post-election.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I just needed to get this out there in response to the hatred that was unleashed against white women. It seemed that, exactly as you say, white women were treated as this one monolithic group, that it became acceptable to hate upon. The insult Karens was wheeled out yet again, and this idea that white women somehow were a disappointment, let the sisterhood down. I think it's really disgusting, the language that's been used. It's actually very racialized language that's been used to describe a large proportion of the population.
Amy, go ahead. You're a white woman.
Well, I mean, we're not monolithic. I mean, and some people, like the world that I live in, all the white liberal women voted for Kamala Harris. But the smarter white women voted for Trump. But the big question here is the black women didn't really help Kamala Harris, because if you look at Oprah Winfrey and Michelle Obama, they didn't help her move down the field at all. In fact, we find out that Oprah Winfrey, her production company, was paid $1 million to stage, that town hall that they did for her. So what's your response to that?
I mean, I think the best thing about this election result and Trump's success is that it really just puts paid to identity politics. The idea that people make decisions in life, particularly about who to vote for, based upon their skin color or their biology. We're all more than that. We vote and make these decisions with our brains. We make kind of rational, reasoned decisions, looking around at our families, our circumstances, the things that are important to us. And this idea that we can all be bunged together into these identity groups, and that we just vote and act according to, like I say, skin color, biology, our sex, our gender. This is absolute rubbish. And I really do think that the massively positive thing about this election result is it just reveals how completely nonsensical this idea is.
It's interesting. Maureen Dowd had this piece a couple of days ago in the New York Times. Democrats in the case of mistaken identity politics. So now, I mean, to the extent there's a little bit of introspection going on, now there's what it reveals is that the identitarians have, ironically, a bit of an identity crisis.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. But I think it also just shows that voters, all voters, including women, are not don't like to be insulted and don't like to be patronized. And the idea that as a woman, all I had to do was to see Oprah or Beyonce or Taylor Swift, or, to see Julia Roberts telling me that I could vote for anybody I wanted to in the privacy of the voting booth, and I was going to come out and support Kamala Harris just on that basis, that other women, these elite celebrities, were telling me that that's what I should do. It's patronizing, it's insulting, and no matter how educated women are or uneducated women are, nobody likes to be patronized and insulted in that way.
Yeah, but we found out, Kamala Harris, she paid for her friends, and Democrats got fleeced by Oprah. I mean, I thought, because for the first time ever, Oprah endorsed a candidate. She went to the convention to give her big speech and then built this set for her town hall. And the people that were the small donors, they're the ones, like, I donated money from my hard-earned paycheck to this campaign, and they built a set with it, and they had celebrities come on that don't even relate to the problems that I have.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. It was fake celebrity endorsements. But then I think Kamala Harris was actually a fake candidate. There was nothing about her that seemed to me to be authentic. Every time she opened her mouth, every time she appeared on camera, it just seemed fake. And I think voters, again, the good thing about this election is it shows that voters really see through that. When Trump goes to McDonald's, for example, you kind of know that he really has eaten McDonald's before in his life, that he actually enjoys a Big Mac every now and again. When Kamala Harris is filmed going around a supermarket looking for a bag of Doritos, you kind of think she's never done that before. It just comes across as completely fake.
The idea that women or white women should be monolithic. That's one thing in terms of who they vote for, the candidate, but then also the policies on which they vote. I mean, the entirety of the appeal was on abortion.
Yeah, and I think, again, the election shows that that was not actually the number one issue for women. I think the economy, exactly the same concerns that were motivating male voters. I mean, so you would expect that women don't live in isolation. They live as part of families, as part of communities, and they have to, budget. They've got to go to the shops and feed their children, feed their families, feed themselves with a limited amount of money. And this is what really, really matters to people. But I think even if you take reproductive rights seriously, it's in and of itself meaningless if you can't actually define what a woman is. And Kamala may have talked about abortion a lot, but it was only Trump who actually seems to know that a woman is an adult human female, that integral to being a woman is having a female body, female biology. Being a woman is not just a feeling in your head. It's not just wearing lipstick and a fancy dress. Whereas Kamala Harris, talked about abortion a lot, but she seemed very confused about what it actually means to be a woman.
Now, on the flip side, I don't want to get too excited here about particularly sort of the rich white females in suburbs and metropolitan areas like around Chicago. And also young women coming up. There's still it just exists a huge divide among young men, Gen Z men versus Gen Z women, in terms of party affiliation and in terms of who they voted for president. So there still is this pipeline that the left has. I attribute mostly to government schooling from K through college, and young women being disproportionate. A disproportionate percentage of the population of those institutions, that they're just those institutions that the left still controls are churning out a lot of people that are oriented towards the sort of identitarian thinking you hear from Joy Reid.
Well, I think there's a lot of truth in that, especially the points you're making about school and universities. We see exactly the same thing in the UK. You get these kind of conformist young women who swallow the woke ideology wholesale and get rewarded for doing so with certificates and job prospects that are not available to young men. But I think this only goes so far, and I'm not convinced that this will always be the case. Again, I come back to the idea that men and women live in society together, not in segregated communities. And, if young women are wanting to get boyfriends and husbands and start families, then they need to meet those young men where they're at. And I think, I hope there is a kind of a human nature and impulse that we want to be part of society like that. We want to mix with each other. And I think that's going to break down some of these barriers. But I'm also just not convinced that young women have really swallowed the woke ideology, perhaps as much as it might appear. And I know my own daughter's 18, and I spot amongst her and her friendship group, some signs of a backlash to this that I find quite heartening.
What are your thoughts on this collective meltdown of the white women that you see on, this sex strikes, getting that poison concoction together? Some are shaving their heads.
I mean, it's just embarrassing, isn't it? It really makes me cringe. And, you think if this is, I think for one thing that, this is the best advert for not being woke, for not going down this line of reasoning. And, I think if I was 17, 18 again and watching these women carry on like this online, I think, my goodness me, get me to a Trump rally as soon as possible for a bit of sanity, a bit of normality. I mean, it's unhinged. But I think, if I want to be generous, then you can almost feel sympathetic towards these young women because, if somebody has told you repeatedly over 2 or 3 years that a Trump victory means fascism, it means Hitler, it means Nazism, it means racism and sexism and all your rights being taken away, even though obviously every single one of those things is utter rubbish. But if you've been told that repeatedly, then, you are going to come to believe it, perhaps. You would have this kind of response. So I just think it's hugely irresponsible of the people in the mainstream media, who've been feeding young women these lines.
Joanna Williams is a Spike columnist. She's the author of How Woke Won. She's also a visiting fellow at the Matthias Corvinus Collegium in Hungary. Joanna Williams, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Wow. Are you buying or are you selling? As this is being written, silver is up more than 50% in just the past 8 months. And gold is the highest it's